Hey guys, welcome back to Supposedly Fun. I'm Greg. It's a little dark in here today, but we're gonna go with it. In a comment on a previous video, Jacqueline McMenamin, I hope I said that correctly, tagged me to say that I should do the BookTube Top Tens Tag, which was started by Old Blues Chapter and Verse. I will link his video down below. I was kind of reluctant to do it at first because it involves picking your 10 favorite books and ranking them, and I don't like ranking my favorite books just because if you ask me to rank my favorite books today, and then you ask again on Friday, my answer will probably be different. It's kind of fluid depending on my mood, what's going on, and things like that. And I really like the books that I really like. I have a hard time ranking, but I kind of found a way to do it. I thought, why don't I think about it as ranking them as most meaningful to me, and that kind of gave me an entry point. So I'm going to do it. So basically, the idea behind this is kind of crowdsourcing the best books, or at least the favorite books of booktubers, by having them participate in the tag, and then Old Blues Chapter and Verse is going to tally the responses and do the results. The final results are going to be in June, so I'm kind of getting this under the wire. But so let's just do this, like rip a band-aid off and get going. So the first few books I'm going to talk about were not actually on my list of favorite books that I did earlier in the year, which just goes to show how much my list can change. Coming in at number 10, I have Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. I actually just got this copy at a used bookstore in town. I saw it and grabbed it because apparently I didn't own a copy before, or had lost my copy. So this usually hovers around my top 10, partially because it's really funny, and it's quirky in a way that really resonated with me a great deal when I first read it. And while most books are lucky to have one memorable character, this one has a plethora. There are a lot of really memorable characters in this book, and a lot of really funny characters in this book. But it's also a really profound examination of war and bureaucracy. The title refers to the situation where the main character, Yossarian, finds himself. He does not want to fly any more missions because he doesn't want to die in combat. But so in order to get removed from the combat roster, he needs to apply and be diagnosed as crazy. But the very act of applying to say that you're crazy proves that you're not crazy, so he's stuck in a catch-22. It's just a really good book, and I actually want to reread it before I watch the new Hulu series adaptation from George Clooney. Definitely love this book. Coming in at number 9, I'm putting 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel, Garcia, and Marquez, and apparently I don't have a copy of this. I think it might be with the books that I've gotten left behind at my father's house, so I think I still own it, but that's neither here nor there. This is something I had avoided reading on my own for a long time. I was intimidated of it, and for some reason, so when I started as a student at Columbia, I signed up for a course that had this on the syllabus, and I absolutely loved it. So I think the experience taught me not to be intimidated of books that are classics, or that I think I'm worried might be difficult, and to trust myself to explore them. I will say I think I benefited a lot from the discussion that happened in the classroom about it, but I feel like I can trust myself to experience these books. I don't need a classroom setting to do it on my own, and that's what this book taught me. It is also a really beautiful novel. It's the story of the generations of the Buendia family, who are a microcosm of the history of Latin America. It is told in absolutely gorgeous prose, in Gabriel Garcia Marquez's signature style of magical realism. I love it. It's really good. Okay, coming in at number 8, I have To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I frequently feel awkward admitting how much I love this book because it feels like a sort of obvious choice, and because it feels obvious or predictable, most people tend to look down their nose at it. In the past, when I've told people that I love To Kill a Mockingbird, they kind of roll their eyes and like, sure. But it's a really good book. It tackles really complicated issues, and I would argue that even at its basic level, there has never been a better coming-of-age story than To Kill a Mockingbird. It is, of course, the story of Scout, who is a tomboy living in the South during the Great Depression, and in the beginning she has a sort of carefree existence, but as the novel progresses, she learns more about the people around her and what they represent about the bigger picture of society. Most famously, she is woken up to the unfairness and the hypocrisies that surround racism as her father defends a black man who has been wrongly accused of raping a white woman. It's a beautiful novel. It says a lot. Unfortunately, it is still very resonant today. A lot of it still holds true today. You would think that hopefully we would have moved past it, but we haven't. So there you go. And then at number 7, I'm putting Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I think pretty much everybody knows what Pride and Prejudice is about. This is a book that's meaningful to me because I resisted the idea of reading it for a long time because I just thought, you know, it's just a silly romance. I don't need to read that. And my sister would tell me that she loved it, and I'd be like, yeah, but whatever. It's just a kissy book. It's nothing serious. And then I finally read it, and I really love it. And the thing is, it's also really smart. It says a lot of very sharp, witty, almost unforgiving things about society. It is such a good book. So what this book taught me is to kind of get over myself and not judge, quote unquote, judge a book by its cover. You know, get past the idea that certain kinds of books are better than other kinds of books. If a book has merit, it has merit. At the end of the day, that's all that matters. And Pride and Prejudice is a wonderful book. It's a classic for a reason. And now we start getting into the books that actually were on my favorite books of all time when I did it earlier in the year. The first one is Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, coming in at number 6. I really love this book. It is a graphic memoir about Alison Bechdel's relationship with her father. He was a closeted homosexual who may have committed suicide, and it's about her relationship with him, and through the course of the book, she is trying to understand him and the way he lived his life and how differently she lives her life, and that push and pull is really fascinating. I love it a lot. It is definitely one of my all-time favorite books. I wish I liked the follow-up, Are You My Mother, even half as much as I liked this book. I do not, but this book will always have a place in my heart. And then at number 5, we have Call Me By Your Name by Andre Aciman. This book is particularly meaningful to me because it was the first book that my husband recommended to me back when we first met. So the fact that I read it and liked it as much as I do really scored him a lot of points. And even when I look back at it, I think about that. So it has a really great personal meaning, but I also really like the story because the movie adaptation came out not that long ago. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what this is about, so I don't need to spend a whole lot of time on it. It's just a really great book. Then at number 4, judge me if you will, it's The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. I just really love this book. It's such a great story. It's about, basically to me, the message is about remaining vulnerable, remaining open to the world, even if you've been hurt in the past. It is just a beautiful, gorgeous book. It made me cry. I am not ashamed to admit that. It also has really spectacularly beautiful illustrations. Let me see if I can find one for you. It's just so good. I love it. This is the book that I most frequently gift to people. It's amazing. And I can't talk about my favorite books without talking about Matilda by Roald Dahl, which I have talked about a fair amount on this channel. I won't spend a whole lot of time on it. But this book, if you haven't seen one of my videos before, is probably the book that cemented my status as a lifelong reader. So it will always be important to me. It will always be one of my favorites. I just love it. Coming in at number 2 is Maurice by E.M. Forster. So when I was first starting to think about coming out, I started kind of exploring a lot of queer literature, and it was hard because most queer literature, especially that was written in the early 1900s to mid-1900s, is really depressing. And part of that is because you couldn't publish a book in that time period that featured a homosexual character without punishing them for their homosexuality. This book is different, and it could not be published until after E.M. Forster died. It was published, I think, in 1971, because he refused to condemn Maurice, the title character, for being gay. And that was exactly what I needed, because I read a couple of books that were just depressing. And this book talks about how, I mean, spoiler alert, Maurice does ultimately have to give up his title and his family name and his fortune, but he's happy at the end of the book. He has love in his life, and that's fulfilling. That's enough for him. And it's just a beautiful book. It also calls back to a lot of E.M. Forster's themes of like connection and humanity, and it's just such a good book. it will always be meaningful to me for the time that I discovered it and what it helped, what it helped me ultimately achieve in my life. Absolutely, I love this book. Number one, it's not really something that's personally meaningful to me anymore, but it is something that was extremely meaningful to me when I first read it. It's The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. I read this when I was a depressed and angry teenager, and of course this is a book about a depressed and angry teenager who's kind of mad at the world and confused, and that was exactly me at that time, and to me this book was my Bible. And you can kind of probably see I have read it a lot. I reread it every single year for a couple of years, just because it meant that much to me. And I have not reread it in a long time because it doesn't mean as much to me anymore, and now I can read it and I kind of... Whereas I used to identify with Holden, now I look at him and think, oh, that's just a young kid. He doesn't know anything about the world. So it's funny how my perspective on it has changed. But it will always be the most meaningful book that has... Well, I don't know. Hopefully there's still time. But for now, at least, it will always be the most meaningful book in my life because it just was... It was the perfect book for me at the perfect time. And it helped me get to the place where I am now. So, there you go. That is my top 10. Like I said, I have a really hard time ranking my favorite books, but I think that's a pretty solid ranking. If you would like to participate, again, I believe in June, Old Blues Chapter and Verse is going to finalize the list. If you want to see how he is ranking them, check out his video. Again, I will link that down below. And thank you for taking the time to watch this video. As always, I really appreciate your time. I know you have a lot of other things, and there are a lot of other videos out there that you could be watching, so thank you for watching this one. And I will be back again. Until then, happy reading.